Next up is Seattle 4 member Faith Ireland to introduce our next new member.
Thank you, President Jeff, members, and guests. If you wanted to revitalize Seattle after this pandemic, who would you choose? A Southerner? A wildlife biologist? Chief of Staff to the County Executive? Climate Action Now coordinator for the Mayor of Seattle? A transportation expert? Well, why not all of the above? We welcome Rachel Smith as a new member and as today's featured speaker. Rachel being chosen as a CEO of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, that's a mouthful, will draw on all of those skills. Even the wildlife biology could come in handy with a city that has 400 parks, 86 miles of shoreline, and over 80 species of birds. Also, rats, squirrels, beavers, rabbits, raccoons, coyotes, and an occasional deer. Rachel Smith hails from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where her sister and brother own her favorite restaurant, East Village Bohemian Pizza. Now that's a reason to visit family. She received her BS from Humboldt State University in Northern California in, you guessed it, wildlife biology. Over the last 15 years, Rachel has been all over government affairs, public policy, operations, and advocacy. She worked on homelessness for the King County Executive Dow Constantine and former Governor Greg Nichols. She was an officer for Sound Traffic. Rachel Smith has also been in nonprofit work as staff or board member with environmental, transportation, and conservation groups. Also with two groups well known to Rotary, Leadership Tomorrow and the Alliance for Education. She is known for innovative problem solving, synthesizing and communicating to make complex systems and organizations work. Her topic today is rebuilding a competitive, equitable, and inclusive economy. And we are delighted to have a new member who can connect us with an organization that promotes business and community. Rachel, give us a sentence or two about how you happened to join Rotary. Jeff, may we?
Yes, let's do that. I'm very excited to have Rachel joining us and really looking forward to hearing from her today. Rachel, please take the podium, and we're looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm certain we're going to have a long list of questions, so off we go.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. I actually have to start with a handful of thank yous. First of all, I want to thank you to John Bridge and also President Jeff, Beth Knox, Dow Constantine for inviting me to Rotary. Thank you, Justice Ireland, for that wonderful introduction. I want to say thanks to Fiona and Caroline for helping me get engaged as a new member, and also want to say a very big thank you to my dear friend Dominic Musafia, who is on this call today, who is always singing the praises of Rotary and got me excited to join even before I talked to John. And I also want to say that it's really nice to be joining my fellow new member, Jen Gladish, and to see so many familiar faces here today, including JC Johnson. Hi, JC. I wanted to say hello. So I'm really excited to be here, and I feel like there is so much I could talk about, but I'll start by saying, wow, what an amazing 4.5, nearly 5 months. I keep saying to people that I feel so fortunate that I really knew the work of the chamber, the staff team, the board members, so I was able to really hit the ground running. And unfortunately, I knew the work of the chamber, the staff team, the board members, so I had no choice but to hit the ground running. But kidding aside, it's been so great, and I feel really at home at the chamber, and I'm excited about the course we're chartering and the work that we have underway. So Jeff, shall I just keep going here? Or okay, I'll keep going. Great. So in that spirit, I'll kick off my remarks sort of hot off the presses. I have actually just walked our executive committee through our organizational goals for the year. So I thought I'd frame my remarks today with those goals in mind. So the first goal is really under the title Equitable Economic Recovery, especially downtown Seattle, and ensuring businesses will have what they need to respond and recover from COVID and other pre-existing challenges. We're doing a ton on recovery right now, many irons in the fire, but I wanted to highlight three things that I'm really excited about. Vaccine distribution, providing CPA support to businesses to help with federal relief, and a focus on government engagement in recovery. So on vaccine distribution, some of you may know or have heard that we've been working in partnership to stand up vaccination clinics. And I've just been a broken record in saying that it is critical that we, the business community, support the swift, wide, and equitable distribution of vaccines. So we've worked to stand up, I think we have our 20th vaccination clinic in partnership today, and we've hit some really great milestones in that work. We kicked off our first drive-through clinic, which was in the hometown of our own Mount Lake Terrace City Council member and Chamber HR Director, Aaron Murray. So that was one. Two, we're nearing the 15,000 mark in terms of people we have vaccinated through our clinics. And three, we've now held clinics in all three counties of the region, King, Pierce, and Snohomish. And I just have to give huge kudos to all of our amazing partners and sponsors. So first, the Chamber's Health Insurance Program, Business Health Trust, as well as QFC, Fred Meyer, Safeway, Dick's Drive-In, Comcast, Premier Blue Cross, T-Mobile, UW, the Boeing Company, Alaska Airlines, Advanced Professional Insurance Services. And then you add that to the work of our chamber members, Microsoft, Starbucks, Amazon, and Virginia Mason, and others who have been working in the vaccine space. And I think it's fair to say that the business community has been all hands on decks with vaccinations. And that's been a really exciting thing that we've been working on. So, again, two most important things as we think about recovery: one, getting shots in arms. So check, we've been working on that. And two, providing supports and relief to businesses until they can fully reopen is the second big thing. On that front, we've developed a partnership with Clark Nuber, our accounting firm, to offer one-on-one consulting with a CPA for businesses with 100 employees or less to access federal resources like the Paycheck Protection Program, Employee Retention Tax Credit, shuttered venues, et cetera. And then the chamber would foot the bill through the generous donations of our members. That has been great, and we have now added a focus on supporting BIPOC-owned businesses through a partnership with the Urban League, and are working on other ways to expand that program right now. And it's not surprising, but it is still just an amazing display of how the business community and our members are coming together to support one another during this crisis and pandemic. And lastly, on recovery, of course, we're working closely with government. We're working with the federal delegation, our federal delegation on infrastructure, and pursuing actually a new partnership with the Portland Business Alliance on a kind of joint federal agenda. Also at the local level, of course, I'm serving on Mayor Durkin's Downtown Revitalization Task Force. We work very closely with the county on public health guidance and transit and homelessness and recovery investments. And of course, we were very active during the legislative session that just concluded with all of the good, the bad, the ugly, and now the vetoed, which has been kind of interesting to watch. And I really think and hope, as I think about the business community, that my government experience is going to help me be an advocate for the business community, making sure that our local, regional, state, and federal governments are resourcing the right things in the right ways as we look towards economic recovery. So the second goal, same issue area of equitable economic recovery, is really that BIPOC-owned businesses and entrepreneurs are going to have access to more and more focused and more pathways to resources to respond to the systemic issues of racism. And this work is really going to be coming through the reestablishment of the Chamber's ADO work, our business retention and expansion effort through King County and the State Department of Commerce. Which we're really shifting towards two North Stars, if you will. One, a focus on BIPOC-owned businesses, and two, taking really a sub-regional approach to our work, which is county-wide, to recognize the differences that, South King County is different than East King County, is different than Seattle, and different than North King County. I really believe that this body of work can be a significant driver for changing and growing our economy and building relationships regionally. And we're really thinking about it as an economic development tool, not just sort of like a social justice effort or a profit-driven business thing. It's neither of which are negative, but it's just something different that we're talking about doing here that we're really excited about. And we're really trying to be intentional about what we're doing in terms of our lane. There's a lot of people doing work in this space, and we believe our lane is to help businesses grow. We're not trying to boil the ocean. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel or do the same thing that others are doing well, like business recruitment or incubating micro businesses. We are trying to leverage the fact that the chamber is really, I mean, to Justice Ireland's point, is really the doorway to the business community in a way that other groups and governments are not. So how we leverage that and do what we do best, which is connecting and convening, I think can really be meaningful in the work that we're doing here. We've been having many conversations in this space with stakeholders in the business community, BIPOC leaders, King County cities in the unincorporated areas, BIPOC business owners and the organizations close to them, and economic development entities. And we've identified a handful of needs, again, as it relates to recovery and the lane of business expansion and retention. And those are, one, more and better technical assistance, especially helping those businesses grow from that sort of 10 employee state to like 30 employees, that really critical growth opportunity for them. Also, programs and tools to specifically help grow BIPOC businesses. We're talking a lot about a group of well-connected people to align funding towards good ideas so that we can really make an impact. Of course, having better communication and coordination through the county and the region, and then a lot of advocacy to eliminate the barriers and promote smart and equitable economic development ideas. So this is a big undertaking, and we've got a lot of work underway. A couple of milestones that we've hit. First, the county executive and I have signed a document memorializing our agreement of taking the ADO in this direction. I want to thank him for his leadership in this arena, which I've known well for many years. Second, the county council just approved the executive's budget, providing additional resources to the chamber for this work so that we really have a lot of skin in the game. And then three, we're hiring. So a new position of Vice President of Economic Development has just been posted to do all of this work. So we're looking for good candidates if folks know them and want to send them our way. Next up is really being an effective advocate for business. So this kind of is bread and butter chamber stuff. And the goal is to really shift the way elected officials and candidates and voters and chamber members and the media talk about the business community and the issues facing our region. This is essentially our sort of change the narrative or build political capital play. And I really believe that by disrupting the way people expect the chamber to show up, by demonstrating a different kind of leadership than what voters see from some other leaders in this community, by building unexpected alliances, by talking about issues in a way that resonates with the voters, and by advocating fiercely and strategically, we really build power as an organization. And on the flip side, let's be honest, we know we lose the voters if we sort of walk into the trap of making them choose between what they believe is progressive leadership and then something branded, rightly or wrongly, as not progressive leadership. We lose the voters in that kind of matchup. But we've got a strategic opportunity to enter the conversation on the side of the voters, to surface what the voters actually believe on homelessness, safety, transportation, and sort of dissatisfaction with the current direction, which is also what we see a lot in the business community. And I think my new motto is we can bring sanity and guardrails to the conversation in a way that isn't sort of in your face business branded, but doesn't diminish and in fact, I would say argue strengthens the business brand. And to do that, you may have all seen, we recently announced this year that we won't be endorsing candidates or making contributions to candidates via our PAC or anything else this year. Instead, we're going to be really elevating and pushing on issues with all candidates in what we're calling an issues campaign. And the idea is that we'll use all the tools in our toolbox, especially voter research and tested messaging for communications with the voters in order to do this. I'll say just sort of generally, you know, as campaigns for elected office begin in earnest, it would be reasonable to expect that working with employers to support a robust and equitable recovery would be at the center of most candidates' campaigns. But as I listen to candidate speeches and interviews and look at their websites, you know, I'm not actually hearing a lot of serious talk about working with business. Instead, you know, I've heard, you know, sort of a familiar refrain, which has been, well, even if I disagree with the business community on something, I'll always take your call. And, you know, I'm really here to say, as someone who's just coming out of government, answering the call of someone who you believe is a valuable stakeholder is the floor, not the bar. As an elected official, simply availing yourself of the conversation with a stakeholder is not engagement. You know, having the meeting is not the outcome. Talking with a few when there are many with a different opinion is not coalition building. And too often that has been the approach, and it often results in a fight. And I'll put a fine point on that. You know, the Seattle Times recently stated that we've called a bit of a truce, which were their words, not mine. And I think it's important to say that there's nothing conciliatory about how we're approaching our work. What we are is solutions oriented. And to be clear, and I know this well, you know, working together isn't always easy, and it isn't the absence of conflict, nor does it mean we won't fight when we believe something is worth fighting for. Sometimes you have to take those fights to sort of hand-to-hand combat, either at the ballot box or in the courts. You all know we are currently in litigation with the city of Seattle on the payroll tax. So speaking of the courts, and also we're supporting the Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment measure, speaking of the ballot box. So both examples of that. And the chamber never has and never will shrink from those fights on behalf of our members. But as those of you here today know and know me, I believe there's often a different path to get a shared outcome. I will always show up to solicit feedback and engage to address concerns, to problem solve and to compromise. And I will also expect that elected leaders and candidates come to the table with open minds and assume good intent as we work together for the city and region we want, and to see it succeed and thrive again. That's how we've accomplished big progressive victories in the past. We need and expect everybody to show up as their best selves. And if we don't, and if they don't, we'll go back to the other tools in our toolbox to get what we need for the business community. But I believe that that collaborative spirit can get us further more often. And that's what we mean when we say solutions oriented. Okay, I'll jump off the soapbox here and on to the last goal in our that I've talked with our executive committee about, which is really in the area of sustained health and continued growth for the long haul for the chamber. And the goal is really to be an invaluable and diverse and inclusive business membership organization with great programming and a lot of capacity. And this is maybe one of the most important, but also maybe one of the straightforward goals. And it is essentially to update our chamber membership program, both the value proposition and the nuts and bolts, for us to have a really solid and sustainable growth plan into the future. We've also launched a number of internal activities since I came on board in January aimed at chamber health, including things like investing in new member management software. We've made several new hires, including a new communications director and a new board administrator, and we're kicking off a compensation analysis. So we're doing a lot of that internal work that I see as critical to build a solid foundation, which is critical to our long-term success. So to close my remarks here, you know, these goals are really in service to a long game, a multi-year approach to resetting the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce back on its sort of rightful civic pillar in a way that builds on a strong foundation and is responsive to the reality we are in right now. We're coming out of a pandemic and a recession. We're navigating a racial reckoning, and we are trying to blunt the divisiveness and revive collaboration in our communities. You know, 2021, from my perspective, for us is really a year of showing up differently, of trying to be unexpected, of being a little bit covert instead of so overt, maybe a little more guerrilla than battlefield in our approach. And I think 2022 really needs to be our power building year, building power and influence for the business community in Seattle and around the region and growing membership. And in 2023, we need to spend that political capital that we built in 2022 in all ways that make sense and are strategic for our organization in order to make this community, both the city of Seattle and all of the other cities in the region, the place we want to be, the place we want to do business, the place we want to live and recreate and raise our families. So with that, I'm going to stop there, President Jeff or Ken, and turn it back to you. Thank you so much.
Ken is going to moderate our questions, and we've got a lot of them. And so Ken, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Awesome. I want to just get a little clarity first. Will you paint the picture of how many cities you encompass and how many members you have currently?
Yeah, so we have about 2,500 members, and about 80% of them are small business, so 100 employees or smaller, and about 40% of them are outside of the city of Seattle. So truly, we are a regional organization. The Chamber doesn't have a sort of strict boundary. For some of our specific ADO work, for example, that is King County centric. So that is specific to the 39 cities of King County. But we work very closely with Pierce and Snohomish County as well. My counterparts there at the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County and the Tacoma Pierce County Chamber just met with both of them the other day. So we really do work regionally with maybe a heavy emphasis in King County and then a heavier emphasis in Seattle.
Okay, very good. All right, can you compare and contrast your view of the mission and of the Chamber and the DSA? Of course, many goals would seem to solidly align, but how do you collaborate, or are you competitors?
No, we are not competitors. We are great collaborators. And I count John Scholes, who also many years ago also came from the county. So we've known each other for a very, very long time. We are great collaborators, and our missions are similar in terms of being in service to the business community, but what we do is very different. DSA is, as you know, focused on a handful of blocks in downtown Seattle, a couple square miles perhaps. They also run the MID, which is, sort of a rate-based sort of cleanup for all of downtown. Their membership is made up of a lot of, property owners and building management firms and things of that nature. They also have a lot of nonprofits and others, as do we. And they really focus on making downtown function. The Seattle Metropolitan Chamber is really more of a regional organization. We work with cities across the region. We take our, we do much more expanded advocacy work. DSA really focuses on the city of Seattle. We work with all the cities. We work in the legislature. We have a federal delegation or federal agenda. So our advocacy work is much broader. And also, I think, as we look at the issues that we work on, DSAs are very, very specific to downtown. We work on issues across the county. We're working with the city of Kent on a project right now. I just met with the mayor of Federal Way, who's facing some new or attracting some new businesses. And so, but the collaboration is truly hand in glove. We work together on all kinds of things. And certainly right now, all of my regional members to a member would say that the revitalization of downtown Seattle is critical to the health and success of the entire region. So it's an all hands on deck moment for the business community. And we are right there taking our marching orders from John in every way that we can help him on downtown Seattle.
All right. How can the Chamber work with Rotary and Rotarians to expose our members to each other?
Well, it's great. And Justice Ireland and I talked a little bit about this. As I said in my remarks, alluding to something different, but, the Chamber really is kind of the doorway to the business community. And I think that there's a huge opportunity for collaboration here, both in terms of resources, which the business community has always been very generous with in terms of helping to make our communities a better place, but also just in connections. I mean, I think that I get to say we as Rotarians now, and we as the business community, share a lot in terms of values, share a lot in terms of where we want to see the city going. And I think we need to really begin to build stronger alliances across different groups in the city if we want to be impactful in sort of seeing the change that we want to see. And that means, you know, I sort of said a moment ago, sanity and guardrails to the conversation. You know, I think all of us, for example, want to see, you know, reform to the police department. I think we also want to make sure that our communities are safe. If we can continue to build out large coalitions to advocate for that, I think that we can be more impactful in the city. And then I would also just say, I think there's probably a lot of nuts and bolts stuff. You know, we're talking at the Downtown Revitalization Task Force right now about maybe having some days where we get people to come downtown and sort of participate in a community cleanup. Faith has shared with me that you guys have talked about something similar. So I think there's also a lot of little opportunities like that along the way, in addition to some of those big picture things that I think we can be stronger together than we are separately.
We have, so we should coordinate on that conversation. We talked about that a lot, so we should. And you, us, and John. I am curious. You've been here 5 months.
Just about, yep.
In the first 5 months, what's your biggest surprise?
Yeah, you know, people ask me that a lot, and it's funny because, well, it's funny because I've known the chamber so well for so many years that I wouldn't say that I was sort of like slapped in the face with anything, which I suppose is also a really good thing, right? That I'm fairly well familiar with the organization that I'm coming into. But I know, and this is going to sound a little cheesy, but I'm going to say it because it's true. The thing that has surprised me the most, as somebody who has been very close to the business community. I mean, every big thing I've accomplished in my career has been done with the business community in partnership. But I've still been on the outside. You know, I'm recovering from nearly 15 years of government. So the thing that surprised me the most is that just how deep the connections and support are within the business community, just how much these disparate companies will come together to stand with each other, to fight for each other, to support each other. It's even more than what I saw from the outside, which was a lot anyway. So it's just a tremendous community, and I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, at just how tremendously supportive it is of each other.
It's funny. I find that surprising. Where does the chamber stand on Charter Amendment number 29?
We have endorsed Charter Amendment number 29. Our, you know, sort of traditional process, which we went through, is to take that to our policy leadership group, which is our sort of policy committee, and they recommend an endorsement to the executive committee, which they took up in April and voted to endorse that. I will say also, you know, early on in the conversations around the charter amendment, my executive committee sort of blessed me to go and sit at that table and to sort of do two things. One, bring my best policy brain to the conversation, which I tried to do, and two, to try to forge some unexpected alliances, which I also tried to do. So the charter amendment work was informed by some of the homelessness service providers that I think we as a business community think are getting some of the best outcomes. So I participated that way, and then the board endorsed in April.
Okay. With Amazon's purchase of several consecutive blocks in downtown Bellevue real estate, it appears that the true location of their HQ2 is not in the Beltway, but actually on Lake Washington, just across the lake. Are Seattle and Bellevue now twin cities, rivals, or besties?
We're besties for sure. You know, I mean, and again, this is where as a regional chamber, you know, we are a little different than, you know, a city specific chamber or a neighborhood specific chamber. As long as we are keeping growth in the region, as long as we are keeping our businesses here, we are happy. That being said, no business should have to choose between one city or another because they're not getting what they need from that city. We need all of our cities to be working with the business community to make it a great place to do business. We need all of our cities to be making the environment in which employers are going to bring people back to work a safe and welcoming one. We need all of our cities to be thinking big about investments and sort of the tools in the government toolbox that can help businesses recover, not just recover, but thrive. So, you know, while we are excited anytime a business is staying in the region, we never like to see that a business feels the need to move from one place to another because of a tough working relationship with business. So that's something we would continue to work on.
I've heard a lot of rumors going around about landfill being put in between both Bellevue and Seattle, so it becomes one landmass. Oh wait, that can't be true.
That is a huge chamber effort that we're.
That's funny. That's humor. I recognize that. How can the chamber help on homelessness in 3rd Avenue with recent expansions of tents on the sidewalks?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I mean that sort of gets back to that. Is this a welcoming community or not? And I think, you know, a couple of things I want to say. You know, one, that the reality of what's going on in downtown Seattle, it honestly causes a lot of negative interaction in our community, and it's negative for everybody involved. It's negative for the individuals experiencing homelessness. It's negative for people who are trying to navigate. It's negative for residents, and it just causes interactions that are not healthy. And I think as a business community, we're all about having a healthy community. And so, you know, we need to, again, have an all hands on deck moment as we're talking about addressing homelessness. I will actually say what the county has been doing, and I don't say that just because I recently came from there, but what the county's been doing in terms of standing up, you know, hotel rooms and other kinds of less congregate shelter where people can come in, they can have their own space, they can store their belongings, they can take a shower, they can take a rest, and really start to get their lives back on track. And we've seen that that's working. And UW recently did a study really looking at that and saying this is a really great way to get people back on their feet. So we need more of that. We need more of what is working to get people into safe spaces. I think, you know, the reality is, and this is sort of unfortunate, you know, I think when it comes to addressing the crisis of on the streets of downtown Seattle, you know, and in our neighborhoods, you know, it seems that solutions seem to evade the city, and yet I think we know what they are. So I think the best thing that we can do as a business community is to speak with one voice on the solutions that we want to see the city engage in, to be really clear and crisp about that. And one of the things that we've done, you know, one, obviously we're supporting the charter amendment because we believe it does do that. Two, we recently sent a letter to the Seattle City Council saying that you know, this sort of great receipt of dollars coming from the federal government through ARPA, we should put a lot of that into solutions that work. These are the most vulnerable in our community, and we need to get them inside and stop those negative community interactions. So we're really encouraging that. We're also advocating at the state level. The state has a lot of ARPA money that has not been distributed. We're making a bold ask of 400 million of that to go to address homelessness around the state. So a portion of that would come here to our community. And, you know, so we're looking at all of the angles that are before us. But I think that the important thing from our perspective is that we, the business community, and we, the voters, and we know this from poll after poll, are saying that homelessness is the single biggest issue in our community right now. So we would like to see the city prioritizing it above other things. It needs to be the most important thing that the city is working on right now. And you know, we don't want the city to sort of wait for the next dollars or wait to see if they have any leftover dollars to address homelessness. We want to see focused effort of the resources that they have on the things that we know work for the individuals experiencing homelessness, and for us to have a healthy community. I realize that was soapbox number 2, but I will get off it now. So really it's about advocacy and working with one voice as a business community and a community more largely to advocate to the city.
I think this next question goes inside of what you just finished talking about. The UW College of Built Environment has a couple of researchers that researched wide varieties in homelessness impact in major US cities. If you have seen the work by Coburn and Ahern, could you comment on how this view should inform actions in Seattle? Do you know about all that?
I am not familiar with that. I would love to see the link. I can say, you know, as you look at, so there's a handful of things. So one, the UW did do a study really looking at the county's programs around moving individuals experiencing homelessness into hotel rooms, showed overwhelming results, positive results in terms of the individuals being able to start looking for jobs, address their behavioral health issues, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Also, when you look at what's going on down in LA right now, they essentially have had the courts intervene in homelessness and are directing very similar things. They're saying, you know, we need to get people into hotel rooms, into more therapeutic environments, provide the services that they need, especially behavioral health services. And then Challenge Seattle, one of our great partners run by my friend, former Governor Gregoire, they just did a study also on homelessness that echoed all of these same things. Again, emphasis on behavioral health, again, emphasis on sort of the criminal legal system and some of the other barriers that sort of cycle homeless people through. So I think we know what works, and so now it's really about aligning our policy and political muscle in those directions to get stuff done. I don't think we need to sort of ask the question again. I'd be very curious to look at this study and add that to my repertoire of how we're thinking.
I think if I'm looking at this correctly, it was just sent on the chat. So maybe have a look at that when we wrap things up. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, a couple more questions. What procedures does the chamber have in place to ensure that Seattle gets its fair share of federal funds available? Is there any joint effort with state government to identify and apply for these funds?
You know, that is a place where I am fiercely advocating, and we're doing great. So we've got a handful of really good things going on. So one, I mentioned just briefly, and we're actually affectionately calling this at my office Operation Bring Home the Bacon, just so you know. And so one, we've been working very closely with our federal delegation. We enjoy great relationships with our leadership there, and are starting to engage in a different way, because obviously with a new administration, one, two, the power of our delegation, and three, the dollars flowing, we really just have huge opportunities. So so we've engaged on specific things like the infrastructure conversation that's happening right now, figuring out how we can draw dollars there. The earmark process, which sort of came back, and that's the project in Kent I mentioned that we actually helped them get an earmark for. So again, bringing those federal funds into our community. Talked about the Portland Business Alliance. So we're, you know, Oregon too enjoys a really powerful federal delegation right now. So just think about if we're combining forces on some key issues like transportation and homelessness, things like that, really drawing those resources to the region. And then, you know, in terms of the dollars coming directly to cities, counties, and states, so that's kind of a formula. So the city of Seattle got about $220 million. So that's where we're advocating strongly for where that money should go. The county got significantly more than that and is investing it in a way that we're really pleased about. They're making large investments in homelessness that do focus, they're region-wide, but do have a good significant focus in downtown Seattle, which we need right now. They've got a handful of recovery dollars in terms of like rent assistance and things like that. The county's putting some of those dollars to us to work on our BIPOC owned business project. Also, the county council put in some additional funds really just to revitalize downtown Seattle. So, you know, I think we're doing pretty good in that space. And then at the state level, like I said, there's a big chunk of change that is currently not allocated. And so we're going to be advocating really strongly. I think if there's a special session, which we hope there will be, to talk about both a transportation package, which we would be strongly advocating for, and also additional funds to address homelessness, you will see the chamber front and center in both of those conversations, trying to draw those resources here to the Puget Sound region, to Seattle and Key County specifically.
Okay, You want to do a lightning round with me? I got 3 questions. I got 2 minutes. Ready?
Go, we'll be fast.
What would you say that Rotary could do with the chamber for Black Lives Matter? Go.
I would say 2 things. One, we are doing some new programming that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's called Recalibrate, and I think we could partner on some of that. I also think for those of you who are engaged in the business community, we can get you plugged in with our ADO work to help those businesses grow.
20 seconds. What measures are in place to evaluate the effectiveness of public money being spent on programs to deal with homelessness? Go.
Not enough, A. B, I think the county has some really good dashboards that I would encourage people to go look at, and I think can be a model for other communities. And C, the chamber is just taking on a project with Eco Northwest to review the city of Seattle, some of their budgetary items. This is something that started prior to my coming to the chamber, but now we're rethinking that a little bit and really going to be focusing it in on transportation and homelessness.
Awesome. 15 seconds. I don't understand how using the hotel rooms is going to be a long-term solution when the economy picks up. Go.
The county is actually buying those buildings. And so what they can do is one of 2 things with willing sellers. They can keep them long-term as sort of SRO style housing for individuals experiencing homelessness, or they can ultimately turn them into something else that is of benefit to the county. I think what we're seeing from the hotel industry is that they are wanting to sell these buildings, and most of them are not the newest of the hotel variety, and you're seeing a lot of new and different kinds of hotels. So I think you're seeing a shift in that industry, getting rid of some of the old stock and thinking about new stock. So we're going to buy up the old stock.
Awesome. Done. Great. I feel like that old guy that used to be on NPR. Remember that on the PBS, and the go, Rachel Smith, your question, go, too long. Thank you so much for being here today. I've forgotten that guy's name, and I really liked him. You are awesome. Thank you for bringing all your knowledge to us. And by the way, welcome to the club.
And remember, Ken, he would always say, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I love that guy. He was one of my heroes. Bye-bye. But you got, maybe I should do that in about 30 seconds. All right. So a quick shout out, as we always do, to our #1 gold sponsor, Bob Alexander. Without Bob's help, we would not be able to share meetings like today's with ourselves, with our friends and our cohorts on our very own YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Bob. President Jeff, back to you. Listen, have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, Rachel, again, thrilled you're a new Seattle Forum member, and very proud of your 15 years of public service, and really excited to see how you're going to take those experiences and apply them to your new role. And we'll be right alongside you collaborating. So welcome.